Hey everybody, hope you're having a good day. I'm back with another video. I wanted to do a video today on Acts 2 and a preterist interpretation of that text. I know growing up I would hear when Peter delivered his sermon that that was something for the end times, where he quotes Joel 2:28 through 32. You would hear people say something like, the Spirit will fall upon the flesh, the sons and daughters will prophesy, old men will dream dreams, and young men will see visions. And a lot of people think this is for the end times. But if you understand that there is no end times in the Bible, and it's talking about the end of the Jewish age, then you understand that this was also for their time. And I'm going to prove that today. If we look at Acts 2 and Pentecost and what happened, we can see that there's three main things that happen in this passage. Christ begins his heavenly reign on David's throne. The kingdom becomes present in power. And the last days of the old covenant Israel officially begin their final phase, right before the 70 AD judgment of Christ. The Pentecost was the beginning of the Messianic kingdom reign. Acts 2:30 through 36, Peter declares that God raised Jesus from the dead, exalted him to the right hand of God, made him both Lord and Messiah, and this fulfills the Davidic promise of a king on David's throne. Okay, I would say, and a lot of preterists would say, that the throne of David is not an earthly but a heavenly throne, and we get that from Acts 2:33 and Psalms 110:11. We believe that Christ is already reigning. We live in this kingdom now because he said he poured out what you see now. And the kingdom has come with power, fulfilling Mark 9:1. So in other words, Pentecost is the inauguration of the Messianic kingdom, not a future event. Okay. Acts 2:17. In the last days I will pour out my spirit. Now we're going to look at this directly to see where this comes from. Peter is just quoting Joel's prophecy, like I said, from Joel 2:28 through 32. And in my very first video, I said that when you hear these Old Testament texts come up, you need to go back and see what they're all about. So you need to go back to Joel and read what those passages are about. It makes the text a whole lot clearer. But we believe that the last days spoken here were the last days of the old covenant age, not a future event, guys, because he told them that they were in these last days. These were literal people being spoken to at this time, not people in their future, like generations, hundreds of years in the future. And it's not talking about the last days of the earth. Pentecost marks the beginning of a covenantal transition, and we talked about this in other videos, where there's only two ages that these Jewish people believe. Two ages that they believe. They believed in the two-age model. The age they were living in, which was the age of their forefathers, and the age to come, which was what was coming upon them now. These last days end in 70 AD with the old covenant system collapse. And we've talked about this before. People think that there's still people following the law today when there's not. Anybody who has ever read through the New Testament knows that that temple is required to fill a lot of those laws. You can't do like a third of them without a temple standing. So for 2,000 years, it's been gone. That's longer than Babylon was from the birth of Christ. That's a long, long time, guys. It's never coming back. It was abolished. It's gone. The age that ended was the Jewish age, not the cosmos. We're not talking about the little earth shutting down. This was the Jewish age that was in. Now, so that we can see what this prophecy is that Peter told them that was going to happen to them. We read that from Joel 2:28 through 32. Sorry. And it shall come to pass afterwards that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the housemaids in those days I'll pour out my spirit. And I will spew wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, the moon into blood, before that great and terrible day of the Lord. And it shall come to pass that whoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in the Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said, and in the remnant whom the Lord hath called. So we see here that the same sun going dark, the same imagery that we see in the Olivet Discourse, which Jesus was talking about, would come upon them. And we believe this was fulfilled in the first century because Peter emphasized this when he directly quotes this at Pentecost. And he explicitly states that this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. So he's telling them that this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. This means that this prophecy, that Joel's prophecy, was being fulfilled right then, not thousands of years in the future. Pentecost marks the moment when the Spirit was poured out on all flesh. The sons and daughters prophesied. We saw that. They all spoke in tongues. The servants and handmaids received the Spirit, and miraculous signs appeared. All stuff we saw at Pentecost. Meaning that Peter was talking about this happening right then. This is not an end times event. You remember how I talked about in the last video, or maybe it was the first video, that there's a lot of apocalyptic language in the Old Testament that carries through to the New Testament. Well, we see in verses 30 and 31, the blood and fire, pillars of smoke, sun darkening. And we see that that is the same apocalyptic imagery that we see in the Old Testament. Sorry, guys, I got the hiccups. In the Old Testament, this language is used all over symbolically. It can indicate the fall of nations, covenant judgment, and also the end of the age. Examples would be Babylon's fall, Egypt's judgment, and Jerusalem's fall. So we see this type of imagery all over the Old Testament, so there's no reason we should be taking this literally when it comes to the New Testament. Why would we change that up? Remember, all the Old Testament people were the ancestors of the people being spoken to in the New Testament. This was the same lineage. We talked about this before, all the way to Christ. And this would all point to a AD 70 fulfillment, when this all, after Pentecost, when this all came to a fruition with the destruction of Jerusalem, which was, we know from the Olivet Discourse that those signs were associated with that destruction. So Pentecost is the start of the fulfillment, and AD 70 would be the accumulation of the day of the Lord on the Old Covenant Israel. Okay? So if we go back and we look at all these signs, the signs that they would prophesy and the Spirit would be poured out. We see all that happening right then to the audience being spoken to in Acts 2. There's no reason at all we should take any of this in our future. And you can, just like I talked about with most prophecy, all prophecy in the New Testament, you can find a New Testament connection. Whoever is laying that out is taken directly from an Old Testament passage. And we know this because both Jesus and Paul taught that they taught nothing but the law and the prophets. So they're not making up new stuff. They're teaching exactly what the Old Testament prophets and the law taught. But anyway, that's my take on this part. I may go in deeper at some point, but I just wanted to kind of give an overview of why this is a past event and what connection it has to the new kingdom and the coming of Christ. Thanks for watching.